In this video, we're going to be reviewing the Smith Wesson M&P 2.0 in 10mm. Just a little bit of history on the M&P line by Smith Wesson, which was first released back in 2005, using a traditional Browning type locking system, and basically is a striker fire alternative to the most popular Glocks at the time. Back in 2017, they introduced the 2.0 series, which included a number of different improvements over the 1.0 series, including things such as a full-length steel chassis, rough textured grips, new trigger system from Pro Series, etc. So a number of different improvements that were made. And that was followed up in 2021 by the 2.0 in 10mm, which you see here today. Now this is the compact model with the 4-inch barrel. They also sell a larger 4.6-inch barrel, both of which are on a full-size frame. You'll also notice it includes a couple other things such as optics ready slide, as well as a new flat face trigger with the familiar Glock type safety dongle on the trigger. There's over literally 40 improvements. Many of them are subtle over the 1.0. And the reason why that's important is years ago at our sheriff's office, we were literally provided the 1.0s when they came out, and practically for free at the time in 9mm. And after shooting them a few times, most of the deputies literally just switched back to their Glock 17s, despite many of the ergonomic problems that many of us had with our Glock grips, the humps and things of that nature. It was still just a better platform, we thought, at the time. However, when the 2.0 came out, it started sparking my interest. And then, of course, just recently, Smith & Wesson ran a $100 rebate on these types of guns, including this one, basically putting the price at a little less than about $500, which to me was a great value and was worth trying it out and seeing if I really like it, because as you probably know, if you watched any of my previous videos, I love 10mm. So looking at some of the features of the gun, the first issue I had was with the sights. Now, if you'll notice on the sights here, they have elevated sights that come stock with the gun. And many of these are, I think, to co-witness, if you will, if you run a red dot or an optics type system on here. I don't know why you would want suppressor height sights on a 10mm. It wouldn't make much sense, but either way, it does come with an elevated sights. And one of the challenges I had with these initially out of the box was the gun was firing very, very low for the sight picture with these stock sights, more so than any other gun that I've had. Normally, if I shoot a Glock, I expect around a 6 o'clock hold. If I shoot my SIGs, it's usually a bullseye hold. This was well above a 12 o'clock hold, which to me just doesn't make much sense. And quite honestly, I was a little surprised it came out that way. And I did also talk to a number of other people that had recently bought these Smith & Wessons with these higher sights, and they expressed a similar problem that I had. So I don't think it was necessarily me, but it might have been something that they should have improved upon when it came out. So as a result of that, what I had to do was buy a new front sight from Ameriglo that was a little bit lower in order to get the proper sight alignment and sight picture for my handgun. And if you've ever worked with sights on a Smith & Wesson M&P, you'll know that these are arguably, and because they're dovetailed in, they're arguably one of the tightest sights that you will ever have to replace on a handgun. So if you're used to changing out sights and Glocks and things like that, you'll know what I'm talking about if you worked on an M&P. It's very difficult to do this. And quite honestly, if you don't have the tools or experience to do it, it can also add additional costs. So that was one of the things I had to deal with. But in this case, I replaced the front sight with an Ameriglo, fixed the problem, and of course, now it is working properly. The second piece of the gun that I really like are the grips. So one of the things you're going to notice with the 2.0s is there's a very aggressive grip texture, and they also come with 4 of these different back straps. Now normally I'm not a big fan of back straps. I think now with the way guns are moving modularly, I would rather buy a frame that actually fits me as opposed to changing out the back straps. However, this is one of the exceptions. On the Smith & Wesson, there's 4 different sizes. The one that I like the most has this little lip at the top here, like the large one, and it's the medium-large grip. So I have an average size hand, and this literally fits my hand perfect. And again, it's not just holding the gun that makes it feel really good. It's when I fire it. And when I'm shooting really stout loads out of a 10mm like this, you want to have as comfortable a grip as you possibly can. And this one is absolutely phenomenal. The other thing about the texturing is it's almost like a sandpaper. It's a really aggressive texture. Some people might like this, other people won't like it. But I can tell you right now, if I was firing this and I had bloody hands, there's no way this grip is slipping off. That's exactly what you want in a combat style grip. But in this case, the medium large grip module that I have on here, along with this texture, really creates a great feel for this gun and great controllability. So that's another benefit that you come out of the 2.0s. You're also going to notice the trigger is a little bit different than the other M&P 2.0s. They're now putting in these flat-faced triggers. And just so everybody knows, I've always safety checked all my guns before my videos. It's a flat-faced trigger with the safety doggle, and basically what it does is it comes down and it breaks at 90 degrees. So it's got a nice clean break at about 4 pounds on my lineman gauge, which is really good for a gun of this type. The problem I have with it is the take-up, and you can hear that a little bit. It's got kind of a creep to it, and it's just kind of a creepy take-up, which I don't like. Now, some people, it doesn't really matter because to them it's the break in the wall. That's actually really good. And then the final thing is on the reset. It's a very light audible and very light feeling reset, more so than any other gun that I have. I personally prefer to have a higher audible and higher feel reset on the trigger. Again, I can deal with this, but it's not optimal. And quite honestly, I've had other M&Ps that I've fired with the old two style hinge trigger that to me were more comfortable than this. But is this okay? Yes. And I'll plan to keep this in the gun. If I wanted to change it out, of course, I could put an Apex trigger in as well, but that's the whole point, is not having to do that if you don't need to. So looking at some of the comparisons, who is the biggest competitor to this gun? There's a lot of people coming out with 10 millimeters now, but the most obvious is Glock. And I've reviewed all of these on the table here. So the Glock 20, the Glock 29, are clearly the biggest competitors to the Smith & Wesson. So first off, let's look at weight, just so you can see the comparison. So in this case, the M&P comes in at 1 pound, 8.5 ounces, which is less than the Glock 20 at 1 pound, 12 ounces, but it weighs almost exactly the same as the Glock 29 at 1 pound, 8.5 ounces. So first off, the M&P has the same weight as the Glock 29. Now, when you look at them size-wise, they're a little bit different as well. So in this case, for example, if I lay the M&P over the Glock 20, you'll see that it's just a little bit shorter on the slide and barrel than the Glock 20. But then when I do this with the Glock 29, since it's shorter, it makes more sense to put this on top. You'll notice that it's a little bit longer than the Glock 29, and certainly on the grip as well. So it literally is between the Glock 20 and the Glock 29. And then when you look at them from a width comparison, depending upon where you measure the width, because if you measure the controls, of course, it's very similar, but in many respects, it's more rounded and less blocky than the Glock. And in the case of when I'm carrying it, it's actually more comfortable to carry than it is either my Glock 20 or my Glock 29. So the feel of it, the contours of it, just make it a little bit different than the Glocks, which are their biggest competitors. Now, as far as capacity is concerned, it comes with 15 round magazines. These are stainless steel magazines. They're very slick and obviously very shiny. Personally, I don't really like that. Some people, I think, might like the fact that, you drop a magazine out that like this, you're probably not going to lose it. It's going to be shiny, but at the same time, it also kind of stands out when you carry it. So, but that's what Smith & Wesson currently releases with this gun, is these magazines. They're good magazines. They're just shiny stainless steel, which is not my preference, but they do work. As far as accuracy, this is very, very good. Smith & Wesson claims that their 2.0 are more accurate than their 1.0s, and I agree. However, accuracy, especially when you're shooting a large bore handgun such as a 10 millimeter, a lot of this comes down to the grip, the recoil pulse, how well and how comfortably you can shoot the gun. That has a lot to do with how well you're going to fire the gun. And in my case, I'm actually firing this even more accurate than I am my Glock 20 and my Glock 29. Not a lot more accurate, but a little bit more accurate for a gun that's in between the two. As far as some of the features, as we talked about before, it's a typical M&P, so it's got a stainless steel slide and barrel. It's got optics ready cut, as we mentioned before. There's a polymer plate on here. You also get a little bag that comes with this for various different mounting options, for various different optics on your handguns. Again, I'm not a big fan personally of running red dots on my handguns, but I know some people are, so it has the capability. There also is an option for a manual safety, or if you're so inclined. It is a ambi safety that they put on the gun. You can remove it, you can add one in, etc. There's cutout fills or plugs, if you will, that you can put in here if you don't run your safety or you're wanting to replace it. These come stock, otherwise if you run your manual safety, etc. But it is ambidextrous, which does add a little bit of width. Now, one of the options I have seen people do, including I've done this, is if you don't want to run ambi safety, if you're a right-hander, you can take a Dremel and cut off the right hand safety, so at least you have the left hand control. So you have that option, as well as the fact that it has a frame cut 1913 for rail mount. So again, typical what you would see in a polymer type handgun. So as far as recommendations, if you're looking or considering one of these in a 10mm, the first thing I would make sure is make sure you get the right sights, or set the right expectations for the sights that you get. Again, if this is a problem I ran into, that's fine. But again, I've run into a number of people, including my own experience, where these sights were shooting way too low. So I had to make those improvements. So just make sure that you understand that if you're having a similar problem, you might have to change out the sights. And again, if you're not experienced in changing these sights out, expect to not only have to pay and get the right sight for the front, but also to have a gunsmith actually replace those for you. As always, when you buy these, they come with just 2 mags, in this case with the M&Ps. So again, you're going to have to buy probably an additional 3 mags. I always recommend that you have at least 5 mags for each gun that you own. Figure out if you want the manual safety or not, or if you want an ambi or not, etc. Otherwise, if you have one and you buy it with the manual safety, you can pretty easily pull this out. If you've ever done any type of gun disassembly, you can order the plugs and etc., or you can install one as well. So it's up to you. And then the final thing is to pick out the right grip module. Again, in my case, again, average size hands, the medium large grip module that I have in here is absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change this at all. I fired all 4 different grip modules. It was amazing the difference that this one had between the other grip modules. So this is the one I'm sticking with. And then the final thing is a holster. Again, my recommendation, what I use all the time, is a Bianchi 101-10 holster. These things are great, especially when you're outdoors, because you can carry it flush up against you through your belt loop. And then, of course, when you're not carrying the handgun, if I need to put it back in a bag or a backpack or things like that, I can just push this down flat against my belt. So again, I have nothing protruding out when I'm not wearing the handgun. So that's my recommendation if you want a holster for this that you can use for multiple handguns, not just for your M&P. That works great for the outdoors. So the final question I often get now, especially when I'm shooting the M&P, is would I carry this over my Glocks? And the easy answer is I already do. To me, this is something I've been carrying a lot recently, especially when I'm outdoors. It carries easier than the Glocks. I can shoot it as accurate, if not more accurate than the Glocks. And quite honestly, I really enjoy shooting this. And that's the review of the Smith Wesson M&P 2.0 in 10mm. If you like this video or you like this channel, please subscribe on YouTube, and thanks for watching.